What's up, y'all? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's recap and review Real Housewives of Orange County, okay? Episode 17, season 19. I know they released part two of the reunion on Thursday. I know, y'all. I know I'm behind. like, and I hate it. But life has been lifing, and I will say the Potomac and Salt Lake City have been more entertaining for me and easier for me to review because I've been more engaged. But I'm not gonna let Orange County go by the wayside. Okay, well I have done that, but y'all know what I mean. We're gonna get into this review, so let's get into this review. All right, y'all. So let's get into this. So the episode opens up, and we are still in Amsterdam. We have Gretchen getting ready for that day's activity. She's on FaceTime with Slade, and he's asking her, "How are you?" Because if you watch the episode before this episode, Gretchen was all emotional at dinner after having her conversation on the hot tub boats with what's her name, Tamara and Emily. And so she says she's in a better mood this morning. In the confessional, Gretchen talks about how she feels like everybody just wants her to get over it, but she's like, grief, trauma, and pain are not linear, which is, she's correct. But I think what Gretchen is failing to understand, as well as Tamara, is that nobody cares anymore. Nobody is invested in it the way that both of those women are still invested in this 12-year-old feud. You two have not introduced new information to this feud. Y'all are actively trying to argue who was the less crappy person. And at this point, nobody cares because both of y'all have been playing in the mud with each other so long that both of y'all's hands are dirty. You got dirt on your hand, both of y'all. So it's like you can say one person did worse than the other, but both people are still worse, you know? So I'm just looking at her like, girl, I don't think it's that people want you to get over it. I just think people don't care anymore. And you're like, that translates to you get over it because they're not invested in the beef anymore. And my thing about it, if y'all were not gonna get down in the streets of Orange County and try to pull out each other's blonde tape ends, then what else can we like? What else can we add to this conversation? Because at this point, we know both you and Tamara hate each other, and there's no reconciliation that's going to happen. So it is what it is, you know. So the scene shifts and we see this conversation happening between Emily and Gina. We find out that earlier, I think that day, Emily got a phone call from Shane and he was frustrated and upset. Man was upset, mainly with his son Luke. It looks like Luke did not want to go to soccer practice, but Shane needed to drop him and I guess his brother off to soccer practice so he could go pick up their daughter, Annabelle. But Luke got so frustrated that he was throwing food. You hear Luke in the background screaming, "I didn't throw food." And then Emily's like, "What do you want me to do, Shane? I'm in a whole other, like, I'm in another country. Like you're making me feel bad." So she's getting emotional as she's speaking to Gina, and she's like, "This makes me feel like a crappy mom. This makes me feel like, should I go home? Like, what should I do? Like, I don't like like I don't know what to do." And so Gina basically tells her, "Girl, no, like you need to invest in yourself. You need to take care of yourself, and then you and Shane will be okay. Luke will be okay." And so Emily is just like, "I've never seen him like flounder with the children, and that's very jarring." So she says in the confessional, she's like, "It's not like he's just like going to therapy and he's getting better. It's just like things seem to somewhat be getting worse." She's like, "It just makes me feel like I can't go anywhere without something going down with Luke." And I do know it seems as though he's getting brain surgery. They're saying that the diagnosis that he has gotten, may be linked to pediatric strep throat, or staphylococcus, which is the bacteria that causes strep throat, and that may cause swelling on the brain. And then the symptoms that he has, which is like OCD and all of this stuff, may be caused by that. So they're hoping that with this surgery that it might reduce the swelling in his brain and he might not be quick to have these outbursts. So hopefully the surgery is successful. Brain surgery is serious. But it seems as though Shane and Emily are trying all their options to help their son. So we find out that the group is going to break up into two groups, where we have Shannon, Gina, and Heather going to this maze and eating shrooms and tripping out. And then the rest of the women are going on this like swing that's like off the side of the building, like off the side of an office building. I think it's called like 360 swing or something like that. I don't know, because it can't be 360 because you're not going in a full circle. But either way, it's a swing and you swing off the side of a building. They show us a flashback of Jen saying, I looked up fun stuff to do and I heard this was a fun thing to do. So we see them pop the shrooms, and so we see the women who are going on the swing in their sprinter, and they're talking about Shannon. And it seems like a very harmless conversation. They're just talking about how funny Shannon is. They bring up Shannon and her Spanx, where the day before she showed them how many Spanx that she has on. And so Emily and Tamara are like, honestly, Spanx don't really do much for you other than like redistributing like the fat. So it's not really like helpful. And so Emily says, it's like a can of biscuits. Like once you open it, everything like explodes out. And so they're all giggling and having a good time. We actually see them arrive to the swing. It is off the top of an office building. Jen is like, girl, I don't know about this. Tamara is like, ugh. And so when they get to the top of the building, they're all just kind of like, girl, maybe this isn't what we need to do. So then we see Tamara and Gretchen go on together. Gretchen is like, I don't like this. I don't like this. And Tamara is having so much fun torturing Gretchen because she's not afraid of heights. So she's swinging back and forth and she's just like, I'm over. You then see Jen and Emily get on, and there's that. So then we see the other women going to do the maze, and they're sitting in the lobby area of the maze talking, and Heather brings up how it seems like Gretchen is really like trying to like own her behavior. She's also surprised that Tamara and Gretchen decided to go to this like excursion like together. She's just like, that's kind of crazy. She was like, the fact that Gretchen was on the bus crying and taking accountability for her actions, it was kind of crazy. And she was like, she felt like that was a good sign. So they show flashbacks of when after they did the hot tub like boats, Gretchen is on the sprinter saying, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to like be like her. She's basically talking about Tamara, saying that like maybe I am not recognizing my behavior, but she was like, I don't want to be like that. So then in the confessional, Heather is like, somebody has to fall on the sword, and it seems like Gretchen is the one that's doing it. And she was like, I'm kind of surprised that she's the one doing it. And so while they're sitting there talking, all of a sudden you can tell that Shannon is like, she's starting to trip out because her eyes are getting big, like really big. And she starts saying like, y'all, this is the Housewives theme music, like the creepy clown music. Well, that's what Heather calls it. And she's like, da-na-na, da-na-na, da-na-na. And they're like, Shannon, we don't hear that. And Shannon's like, y'all don't hear it? Y'all don't hear it. She's even in her confessional saying, I hear the Housewives theme music. And Gina is like, oh, she is tripping. Like the high has kicked in. So you actually see them go through the maze. I don't know if I would want to get high and go through a maze. I feel like that would make me panic because like I would be ready to get out. And then it looked like it was a, like they have fun mirrors. And I'm like, girl, I'd be like fearful of walking into one. And then they had this one section where they were walking through, and it was these mannequins. Girl, that would have had my blood pressure high, because I'd have thought maybe one of the things come to life and tried to shake me or something or take me down. They were having a good time. They went to this one room where they pressed this button and a bunch of confetti shot out, and so they were dancing and things of that nature. So then we get back to the other women who, went on the swing, and Jen brings up, she was like, well, how are you two feeling today? Basically to Tamara and Gretchen, saying like, you guys are hanging out with each other. Like, this is kind of crazy. And Gretchen says, I never would have expected us hanging out, She was like, I never thought this would be something that we would do. She just was like, here we are. So then Jen says, what do you wish to happen, or what do you want to happen between you guys? And she was like, I just want her to acknowledge, now that Teddy is dealing with cancer, how hurtful it was for her to do what she did to us when I was experiencing someone I love going through cancer. So it flashes back to 2008 when Gretchen was, I forgot the guy's name, my apologies, her fiance, who ended, well, was she married to him? I feel like it was her fiance. But they flash back to when she took him out of the hospital and they went on a horse-drawn carriage ride, and he was dealing with cancer. And so Tamara was like, "Well, no, yeah, I could definitely like apologize for that." She was like, "My heart breaks, especially now dealing with someone who has it as well. It's a lot to deal with." So then Tamara looks up like a friendship contract on Chat GPT, and they read about it. Gretchen says in her confessional, like, all she wanted from Tamara was like empathy. So she's actually surprised that Tamara is acknowledging the way that she hurt her. And I'm with Emily, like, girl, I don't want to hear about this no more. Sign the friendship contract, but like at this point, let's move forward because I don't want to talk about this anymore. And I'm with her. I wouldn't want to talk about it anymore either. Y'all, I'm so annoyed. So while I am editing the video, I find out that the audio is distorted on half of my video. So here we are. So pretty much when the women get back from, the swing and the maze, they break off into several groups again. So we see Emily and Heather on their way to her parents' old house to spread her father's ashes. We also see a conversation take place between Gina and Tamra, and we don't see a conversation take place between Shannon and Gretchen, but later on that comes up in conversation when the ladies go to dinner. So the conversation we see that happens between Gina and Tamra, pretty much Tamra fills Gina in on like the friendship contract and all of that stuff, and Gina is taken aback. But Gina says, like, since you brought up Gretchen, she ends up saying, "I can't get out of my head what you showed me," and she's like, "We have to talk to Gretchen about it. We have to confront her." So it flashes back to when the women were at the dispensary, and Tamra shows Gina the videos and screenshots of all the hateful things as it pertains to the LGBTQIA community that Gretchen was liking. And so Tamara was like, "Well, let's have a good time today and we'll address it tomorrow because tomorrow we'll be on a flight and everyone will be heading back to Orange County." And Gina agrees. So, like I said, we end up seeing Emily and Heather go and spread her father's ashes. I was actually surprised that she brought Emily with her. I tell y'all this all the time. I don't think that Emily or Gina really like Heather. They always have something shady or slick to say. But maybe Emily actually does like Heather because we end up finding out that the two of them have bonded over their strained relationships with their parents, and they both talk about how they're somewhat jealous of their kids and the relationships that they have with their husbands and how they wish they had those types of relationships with their parents. Heather talks about how her dad has a birthmark in his ear, and she also has one as well. And she expresses how she doesn't really have any very warm and fuzzy memories about her dad, but she said she had an autograph book when she was younger, and her dad wrote something in there, and something to the effect of like, just always remember the dot in your ear and know I'm always there, which I thought was very sweet. Um, Emily talks about how she wished she could speak to her mom and rely on her and just have conversations about parenting because she needs someone to talk to about Luke's diagnosis. But Emily says she feels abandoned by her parents. She also expresses how she can't call them for advice because she doesn't believe that they were good parents. And I was like, dang. Because when you think about it, when you choose to be a parent, you that's a lifelong commitment. Like, you are a parent until you go into the earth. So I can only imagine what a benefit and a blessing it is for people who do have good relationships with their parents to have a safe space to contact them when they become parents, to just, vent or to get advice from. And you never really think about that until you have kids and you start to evaluate how you were raised and things of that nature. So that sucks for Emily. So they're having this conversation in front of her parents' old house. And the homeowner actually comes out. I think his name was John Pierre. He basically invites them inside of the house, and they're doing like side by side comparisons of how different the house looks. And he's done great, like, renovations. If those were the renovations that he did or whoever did them, they look nice. Heather just talks about how, like, it's just crazy because she hasn't been in that house for 23 years. And she was like, the house was just always alive. She also expresses how she's never saw her dad be that happy before, um, but only in Amsterdam. So this is why it was important for her to spread his ashes in the canal, because she feels as though Amsterdam was his happy place. So we actually see Heather spread the ashes, and I'm not gonna lie, it made me tear up, especially when she says "Love you, Dad" and "Bye, Dad," and it reminded me of when I went to my granny's grave just to talk and was just like, "I hope you hear me," you know. But this season, I think it was really nice to get more of Heather's vulnerable side. I hate how people try to act like she's like this robot or so sterile. And it could just be like because I am the same zodiac as her. I understand. Like I can tell when someone is being emotional, like that is the same zodiac as me. But it was just nice to see her share this piece of her life and give more insight as to how she is and why she is at times very controlling and very put together. But I thought the words that she said about, hoping he's happy and at peace and drinking Chardonnay was actually really sweet. And, it was a nice moment to see her and Emily like embrace and Emily be like, I didn't hear everything, but like I could feel it and they hug each other. It was a nice moment. So skipping right to the drama. So when the ladies go to dinner, Shannon decides to bring up a conversation that she had with Gretchen. We see in a flashback when the ladies broke up into groups that Gretchen decided to take it upon herself and pretty much say that Emily was fat shaming Shannon when they were on the sprinter, laughing and talking about her and her Spanx and how all of that stuff coming off probably looks like biscuits popping out of the thing. And it hurt Shannon's feelings. So Shannon brought it up to the table. Emily and Tamara are taken aback because they were like, girl, we were all laughing and there was no malicious intent. And Gretchen ends up saying, like, well, we were talking about it, but she was trying to like absolve herself from the drama. And I actually agree with Gina, where Gina is like, Gretchen likes to act so pious, like she's so above everything, but also she engages in the drama and she actively creates problems. And I'm like, yeah, because this is the second time she has caused a problem. Like that conversation, there was no malicious intent. Like, would someone consider what they were saying fat shaming? Yeah, but you could tell they weren't being mean about it. It was just them laughing and giggling. And it's just kind of like, why did you take that conversation back? And why did you not put in there that you were joining in? Because we also see a flashback of Gretchen in the car when they were on their way to the restaurant, where she was like, I wish I would have stood up for you more. You didn't even stand up for her. You were laughing too. Like, like, girl, for real? And so um Gretchen ends up telling Emily that like Emily just can't take responsibility. And Emily tells Gretchen, shut up before I go off on you. And I'm like, yeah, shut up, Gretchen. But Emily ends up apologizing to Shannon, basically telling her, like, my intent was not to hurt you in any type of way. And if you felt that way, I am truly sorry. And Shannon says this is what a real friendship is, where you can, have conversations, tell somebody how you hurt them, and remedy the situation and move forward. So she is appreciative of her relationship with Emily. But Gretchen, girl. So the next scene, we have like two separate scenes. So I think it was Tamra, yeah, Tamra, Shannon, and Gina go bike riding. Mind you, they should have never got on those bikes because we find out that Amsterdam has a very big cycling culture there. They have like a bike lane and everything. Mind you, I was like, that should be on the street, not on the sidewalk. But that's me. That could be my, my American brain. But they were getting on my nerves when they went to the park. Like Shannon was acting all wobbly. I mean, she could have been, I don't know, she's 62. I don't know. But she was getting on my nerves. Then and she got that big American flag sweater on that you get from Gap. And I was like, or Ralph Lauren. I was irritated. Then you have Gina, Jen, and Tamara constantly apologizing to like the people in the park and other cyclists because they're in the way. And I was like, if y'all don't get off the bikes, get off the like, I'm so irritated. And then we see the rest of the ladies, they actually go to this boutique. So while they're at the boutique, we end up seeing this conversation happen between the ladies that are there, which is Gretchen, Heather, and Emily, where they're talking about Luke and like Heather is giving Emily like words of encouragement, saying like there's gonna be good days, there's gonna be bad days, but that doesn't like that's not the totality of like your child's life. Like You just have to work with it. And she was just like, thank you, Heather. Like, you always seem to like pull me off the edge. Okay. So we then see the conversation taking place with the other ladies. But before we get there, we find out that the other women, like Heather, Emily, and Gretchen, are going to make waffles. They look good. Them waffles was good. I think the iron that they had was like from the 1800s or the early 1900s. Either way, them waffles look great. So they pretty much said that they were going to have like a good time. They hope that the last dinner is going to be a great dinner, so the trip will end off like without a hitch, because Heather was actually surprised that it seems like the group is shifting like in a positive direction. Like Gretchen and Tamara are in a good place. Like, let's hope it continues. So getting back to the ladies in the park, Gina ends up giving Jen her props for like posting working out on her own on her Instagram. And I was like, what's the point of this? But they end up showing us like a flashback when they were at the Tulip Garden, where Gina basically told Jen, girl, I feel like I follow Ryan, but it seems lately all you do is post Ryan. And they give us a montage of posts of Jen and Ryan on her Instagram, or just things of Ryan. And she was just like, I don't want you to lose yourself. I want you to like have your own identity. So then Jen brings up how, Ryan has this colorful past. And then Tamara chimes in, he was a playboy. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, sometimes I worry, am I enough? Like, he doesn't make me feel like I'm not enough, but I get in my head and I'm like, am I enough? Like, at 72 years old, is he still gonna want to be with me? And so Shannon says in her confessional, these are valid insecurities, because Gina said that's an insecurity. And she's like, it's valid because we've all been divorced. We've all have men that we thought we were going to be together with till the end leave us for younger women, or just stray away. So I can understand where Jen is coming from. But I also feel like if you are going to go into a marriage with somebody, you should not feel like you're not enough. Like, I do understand where Jen is coming from. This is her second marriage. She is with a man that's the town whore. Everybody know how Ryan gets around. It's community dick. And so it's like, with that, you knew this information and you're still willing to marry him. So that is something that you have to accept. I never understand when people get married to other people and they're insecure. Because my thing about it is, if I'm going to spend all this money and I'm going to legally bind myself to somebody, there should be a level of trust and confidence that I have in that person, where I'm not feeling insecure like that, And sometimes, like Jen said, it can be you. Your partner can be doing everything imaginable to make you feel comfortable. But if you yourself do not believe them, or you have those insecurities, then it is a you thing. But it's just kind of wild to me that she does have all these insecurities, yet she is trying to marry this man, and all these things about him being a pass around in the community, But Tamara gives her, I think, good advice, where Tamara basically tells her, I want you to be financially independent. Whereas if this relationship doesn't work out, you don't have to rely on him. You can take care of your own kids, and it's not like a hindrance to you living your own life. And so in the confessional, Jen talks about how like she is kind of surprised that her and Tamara are having this real conversation, and it's not laced in shade or snarkiness. Like, she's actually being a genuine friend, and she's like, I wish there was more of that. So it comes time for them to do their last dinner in Amsterdam. I actually like Shannon's hair. I was like, okay, Shannon, whoever did that, keep them, because the hair is nicely coiffed. Okay? So like I said, they are at the restaurant. I was actually really surprised that they started running the summaries of like where everybody is, and we had like maybe 15 or 16 minutes left of the episode. So I said, oh, I guess this is when the Gretchen piece is about to go down. Okay. So you have them running the summaries of everybody. Emily's still struggling to deal with her son's diagnosis. Heather finally sold her house, but they sold it at a $5.8 million loss. Tamara's daughter is thinking about moving to New York to pursue her music career. Shannon bought a new dog by the name of Troy. Jen and Ryan haven't gotten married yet, but Dawson graduated boot camp. Boy passed out 20 minutes into the ceremony. They need to get him checked out, because that's not normal. And then Gina and Travis are doing good, but Gina is the one that starts this whole situation with Gretchen, where she basically is like, Gretchen, I have something to talk to you about. Like, there's this thing coming to my mind where it was brought to my attention that you have been liking anti-LGBTQIA posts. And when I tell you Heather's eyes got big, I said, oh, Heather about to freak out. And so Gretchen is like, I don't have a problem with the LGBTQ community. Like, what are you talking about? And Gina's like, well, girl, there's a bunch of posts that you have liked. Honestly, I think the screenshots that I talked to you guys about that were attached to a video is what they were looking at. I talked about that in a spicy corner because one of the images looked familiar to me, even though it was blurred out. And I think it was the one with the kid where the guy was trying to say, if you are gay, then that's linked to like child abuse. So it was a mess. It was a mess. And she was like, I knew Gretchen liked that stuff, even though they keep saying it's alleged, is because she was like, sometimes I just like stuff and I scroll. And I'm like, what kind of response is, like, who just likes that stuff and you're not reading? Like, yeah, there's some, like, I like pictures and I scroll, but if someone has like a passage, then I'm reading that passage. Girl, no, you were liking that stuff, and some of those things were videos. So what are you talking about, Gretchen? And so we find out that Tamara has been sitting on this information for a year because it was sent to iHeartRadio. And she was like, she wanted to talk about it, but iHeart was like, no, we're not getting into that. They give the phone to Heather. Heather's going through it, and Heather gets irritated and just hands the phone away because they also bring up how one of the posts was about Dylan Mulvaney, which is Heather's friend, and she was in her music video and we saw her on the show. So you then hear somebody say, this is weird. And so Gretchen is like, well, sometimes I just like stuff. She was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's not true. So then I knew Heather was mad when Heather brought up the Trevor Project, where she was like, do you know that like every 45 seconds an LGBTQIA youth attempts to take their life? Like, do you know that? I said, ooh. Do you, like, you could tell she was like, every 45 seconds, Gretchen. I said, oh, she was upset. She was like, that is hateful rhetoric, Gretchen. And so Heather's just like, I don't understand because, like, I have no words. She was like, if this stuff is true. Like, so then Heather's like, why are you not horrified by this, Gretchen? Like, if this is not stuff that you liked, why are you not, like, ashamed? Like Heather was upset. So then Tamara was like, well, why don't you just stand in it? If you feel this way, Gretchen, you feel this way. Now, I will agree with Tamara on this. I can't stand when people who are homophobic, transphobic, colorist, racist, like just a bigoted person gets outed and they can't stand in it. If you gonna be hateful and be loud and proud about it. Like, don't do all like, well, that's not my heart. No, that's very much you, and that is your heart, and that is your character. Like, stand in it. Because not only are you hateful, you're also a bitch and a coward. Like, ew. Ew. Pick a struggle. Okay? And so Gretchen is like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. So then Gina gets up and gives her phone to Gretchen. And so Gretchen is looking at it. And Heather's like, this is about human decency. So then when Jen jumps in and she was like, do you biblically feel that way? Heather said, biblically? I said, oh God, Jen, sit this one out. And Heather's like looking at Jen, and Jen is like, Heather, I'm just asking. So then you hear Tamara say, Jesus loves gay people. And then you hear Heather say, Jesus doesn't like hate. I said, oh my gosh. And you see people in the restaurant looking at them like, Jesus, like, what is going on over here? So then Jen is in her confessional basically saying, I know Gretchen, I know her soul, I know her heart. Something seems amiss. I'm gonna be honest, girl. Both of y'all have clouded judgment, and we know your hearts because y'all support that orange man in office. Like, you were at a Morgan Wallace conference. No, it wasn't a concert. That man proudly says the N-word. He said it. We heard him say it, okay? So we know how you get down, Jen. Also, girl, Gretchen had on that red hat. We know your heart and your soul. It's not pure. So Heather is going off. She's like, you're intentionally liking hateful rhetoric. And so Gretchen is like, I don't know, like, Heather, like, I don't think I'm doing that. So Gretchen is in her confessional saying, this stuff is not true. It's not true. She's like, I'm telling you, I don't feel that way, and it's not true. And so Tamara is like, girl, that's not a good enough answer. That's not a good enough answer. So then Shannon is getting emotional on the side of the table, like tears in her eyes. She was like, this is insane. Jen is trying to comfort her. She was like, I just don't understand. So then in the confessional, Shannon is just like, I have a lot of friends and a lot of people in my life who are a part of the LGBTQ plus community. She was like, if she is liking this stuff, like I can't understand why you would want to be so hateful. So then Shannon ends up asking Tamara, how long have you known this stuff? And she's like, a year. And so Shannon's like, why didn't you tell us this? And so Tamara's like, because I knew off rip y'all were gonna say that I was the one in the wrong. And so Tamara gets defensive. She was like, are you defending her? And Shannon's like, no, but I'm like, if someone is liking this heinous stuff and they're in our group, you should tell us this. Like, how have you known this stuff for a year and you're not telling us this? She's like, something's going on. And I will agree with Shannon to an extent. Like, yeah, girl, if you knew this lady was liking all this heinous stuff, Tamara, why now tell us this stuff? So I can understand why Jen and Shannon are very weary of like backing Tamara, but also your friend is liking this stuff. But I can also understand Tamara being like, if I would have brought this to you guys, y'all would automatically make me the bad guy, which is also true. Very much true, because we know you are a calculated individual. So Heather gets up from the table and you can tell that she's very emotional. We also see her like call Terry on FaceTime and she's just telling him what's going on. And he's like, really? So then you have Gina sitting at the table and she's like, girl, we need more from you. And so then Tamara was like, if someone was calling me a homophobe, like, girl, I would be like screaming my eyes out. I would be crying right now saying that is not true. And so then Gretchen says, I'm not about to get upset about something that's not true. Like, she was like, I had a Tupperware party and there were drag queens, but that was back in 2009, girl. It's 2025. And let's be honest, a lot of people who are homophobic will enter into gay spaces just like a lot of people who are racist will enter into black and brown spaces just so they can feel superior and mock those spaces. So just because you had a Tupperware party where you invited a drag queen or a few drag queens does not make you an ally to that community and does not mean that you are tolerant or you respect that community. It just doesn't. So she's just like, I'm not going to get upset about things that aren't true. So then Tamara ends up saying, girl, this is BS. Like, this is BS. So then everyone's like, girl, like, why aren't you having a bigger reaction? Like, why aren't you having a bigger reaction? Emily jumps into the conversation. She's like, honestly, if you are, like, you keep saying, I don't know. But if this was me, I would be beating the table saying, girl, F you, Tamara Judge. This stuff isn't real. And I do agree with Emily. If it wasn't, like, my reaction would be different. Even if I was shocked about the information that's being presented to me, I would be screaming from the rooftops that this stuff was not true. Tell Gretchen, you need to go talk to Heather. Heather's not really trying to entertain a conversation with Gretchen. She was like, are you not horrified by this? And so then Gretchen grabs Heather and she's like, do you think I have hate towards your children? And then Heather says, girl, I don't know. I don't know which one is true. I don't know. And so Gretchen is like, do you really feel that way? And Heather keeps saying, I don't know. I don't know, girl. And so then that's when Tamara is at the table saying she's a horrible person, guys. She was like, this has been going on for 12 years. And that's how you know this was not a genuine move from Tamara. It was just another way of her exposing Gretchen. Because what does her liking heinous posts about villainizing and demonizing a community have to do with your 12-year-old feud? Other than you want to mark off a chip that, like, you're not as bad as her. So then we see Gretchen call Slade. And everyone's irritated because it's like, girl, why do you always have to call Slade? And most people are like, the women are at the table just like, she can't do nothing without Slade. And Slade is like, well, these things aren't true. You're not that person. Don't give it any credit. Like, when you type in Tamara's name and homophobic slur, a video comes up of her calling me the F word. And they flash back to 2008 where Tamara does in fact call Slade an F word, basically saying he looks like a you-know-what because he had on flip-flops. And it also shows how far we have come, but also how far we need to go when it comes to people feeling comfortable using slurs. Because back in 2008, she just freely called that man an F word and nobody batting an eye. No one was like, Tamara, they just accepted it. Knowing good and well, if she were to say this now, they would cancel her. She would be kicked off that show expeditiously. But the fact that she's still on the show is kind of wild, but it also shows growth in a sense because Tamara is a supporter of that community. But Slade did have a point. So the crab comes to the table. Everybody is not feeling it. They all decide to get on the sprinter and go back to the hotel, but they don't want to ride with Gretchen. They don't want to ride with Gretchen. Gretchen tries to get on the bus, and Tamara's like, no. And everyone's like, yeah, Gretchen, I think they have a car for you. So then all of a sudden, Gretchen puts on the waterworks. Like, why are you guys doing this to me? Like, you guys are supposed to be my friend. Why are you doing this to me? And then Tamara's like, stop, like, go away. And everyone's like, Tamara, chill out. So then she's like, Heather, do you really believe this stuff? Like, do you really? And Heather's like, girl, I don't know. She was like, why are y'all doing this to me? And then even Shannon gets in and says, girl, you're going to have to figure this out. Because Gretchen is like, what can I do? And Shannon says, I don't know. Figure it out. So, like, everyone was definitely turned off. So then it's the next day when they're supposed to be leaving Amsterdam. And Gina was like, she wanted to make sure that the way she was feeling about Gretchen was genuine. So she went back and looked at all the posts, but she was like, she couldn't find anything of where Gretchen liked it. I said, that's because Gretchen probably went back and unliked those things. Because I'm like, girl, let's be honest. She's been liking stuff since 2022. In that video, it goes all the way back to 2022. And then what sealed the deal for me is when Gina says, but she still follows these accounts. So you're not going to tell me you're not following an account that you don't like stuff on. You're not. So now everyone's kind of feeling like maybe they were too harsh on Gretchen. And I was like, no, because Gretchen did like that stuff. So we get back to Orange County. Gretchen and Slade are having a conversation. Slade basically says, we're going to get down to the bottom of this because that's not your heart. Tamara and Eddie have a conversation where she was like, I feel like there's going to be retaliation from her, but I don't want to be around her. So then the screen goes black and this message pops up where it says, after production wrap, some of the women received DMs from a person with information about the show. And it says, which had not been yet aired to the public. So we see the women at Jen and Ryan's house before the premiere. It says May the 9th, 2 months before the premiere. And basically this person DM'd them saying that Tamara has been leaking details about the entire season throughout a filming to bloggers and fan pages. And pretty much they sit there and this man maps out the entire season. He talks about what went down with Katie quitting the show after the lie detector test. They talk about when Tamara and Katie met up, and it's all like, dated, like May this, April this. Like, I mean, he gave all the tea, and they're like, oh my gosh. And so then Gina gets really angry because Gina is like, the guy says, well, she also says that you and her like kind of conspired to take Gretchen down with the post. And so Gina's like, no, she brought that information to me. So now Gina feels used. So then you have Jen and Shannon in their confessional basically saying that Tamara is so evil. Like, why do you have to try to destroy somebody's life? But I was like, but that just still does not make what Gretchen is liking okay. Because she liked those posts. She did. But I do agree when Jen said, y'all were mad at Katie for what she was doing, but Tamara is leaking the season. And that's valid. And I do believe Tamara is doing that. I do. I do. And so that's where the season ends. So if you decided to watch this video and you made it this far, thank you. Please like, comment, and subscribe. As always, remember to be bravely authentic. And I'm out, y'all. Deuces.